So Austin, you mentioned a term earlier that I'm not familiar with, intangible drilling costs. Can you explain the difference between intangible and tangible drilling costs, and how are they treated differently for
Sure.
oil and gas properties?
Right. So again, it's kind of a little bit of a different language when you're talking about oil and gas investments, but I mean, tangible is kind of a little bit easier to understand.
Okay, makes
So
sense.
tangible, let's start with tangible. So tangible is kind of what you see when you drive and you see, pump jacks, or you see some type of drilling rig that is set up, or you're, out in the bay and you see some kind of drilling rig set up. That is tangible property because you
sense.
see it.
Yeah.
So it's real, it's tangible. That is what kind of is left there after the drilling takes place, right? So when the drilling initially takes place, that's considered intangible drilling costs. So it's basically the pieces of, the work that it takes in order to, spud the well, that will not remain there on site. So all of the costs associated with that is considered intangible drilling costs.
Okay.
So tangible drilling costs, we have, again, it's going to be a fixed asset that we can depreciate. So typically, tangible drilling costs and tangible drilling equipment is depreciated over 7 years.
Makes sense.
The intangible drilling costs, you actually have the election to deduct it as it is incurred. And the way that you make that election to basically deduct IDC, or intangible drilling costs, is on the first tax return that those costs are incurred. So on that first tax return that you incurred those costs for IDC, that is your opportunity to tell the IRS that I am choosing to deduct IDC from this point forward. So now, most of the time that turns out to be a better option for clients because, it's capital intensive. You're going to be spending the money, you might as well be getting the deduction for it.
Definitely.
So a lot of times they would prefer to deduct it. There is a secondary election that you can make for IDC that a lot of times clients don't really think about. And typically when they're thinking about this is when they're filing their individual tax return, because they're going to become familiar with a separate tax, not talking about federal income tax, not talking about property taxes or severance taxes that we were talking about oil and gas, just going to a federal standpoint. There is a tax called the alternative minimum tax.
Okay.
And intangible drilling costs is considered a tax preference item for alternative minimum tax, or AMT. So AMT can sometimes be triggered and then cause clients to owe additional tax funds that they otherwise wouldn't be having to pay. So basically, alternative minimum tax is it pushes your tax above the alternative line in order for you to basically be paying additional tax that you wouldn't be doing otherwise. So IDC, or intangible drilling costs, as a secondary election, you can choose to amortize it over 60 months or 5 years. So once you do that, it removes that AMT preference item. And therefore, clients aren't going to be surprised and having to pay additional taxes. Now, they might be having to pay a little bit more taxes, but you get to spread out that deduction over 5 years. So you don't lose out on it, but it's more kind of a timing difference.
It's a little bit advantageous. No one likes surprise taxes.
That's right. So if you do get hit with a surprise tax related to alternative minimum tax, and it has to do with intangible drilling costs, thankfully there is a secondary election that you can make if that was to happen.
That's a good tip. That's a good tip.